Welcome to Real Scary, the home of true scary stories, bringing you the very best in not only British ghost stories, but ghost stories from around the world. So if you're quite partial to a scary story regarding terrifying ghostly sightings, you're in the right place. And today's scary story is of undoubtedly the most haunted house in England, the world-renowned Borley Rectory, the mecca of British ghost activity. Borley Rectory was a house famous for being described as, quote, the most haunted house in England, unquote, which was built in 1862 by the very wealthy Waldegrave family to house the rector of the parish of Borley. The large Gothic-style rectory located on Hall Road in the village of Borley, which is in North Essex, England, had been alleged to be haunted ever since it was built. The nearby Borley Church, which dates back to the 12th century, serves a scattered rural community of 3 hamlets that together make up the parish. A Benedictine monastery was supposedly built in this area in circa 1362, and according to folklore, a monk from the monastery conducted a relationship with a nun from a nearby convent. However, after their affair was discovered, the monk was executed and the nun was reportedly chucked in the well in the grounds of the rectory and left to die for breaking her vows of chastity. In 1929, after the Daily Mirror newspaper published an account regarding a visit by paranormal researcher Harry Price to Borley Rectory, and who later wrote 2 books that strongly supported claims of paranormal activity at the house, a short programme was commissioned by the BBC regarding the alleged paranormal activity at Borley and was scheduled to be broadcast in September 1956. It was subsequently cancelled owing to concerns about a possible legal action brought by Marianne Foyster, who was the widow of the last rector to live in the rectory. In 1975, the BBC did, however, air a programme entitled The Ghost Hunters that focused on Borley Rectory and conducted interviews with several psychic researchers, including Peter Underwood. It also featured a late-night psychic investigation of nearby Borley Church. Reverend Henry Bull was named rector of the parish of Borley in 1862 and moved into the rectory with his wife and children approximately 1 year later. The house replaced an earlier rectory on the site that had been destroyed by fire in 1841. The rectory was enlarged by the addition of a wing to house Bull's family of 14 children. The first paranormal events reported at Borley occurred in 1863. 4 daughters of the rector saw what they described as the ghost of a nun at twilight in the grounds of the house whilst playing. They tried to talk to the nun, who did not respond to their requests and simply disappeared as they approached. The local organist at Borley Church, a gentleman by the name of Ernest Ambrose, later said that the Bull family were very convinced they had witnessed paranormal activity at the rectory and on several occasions. Various people claimed to have witnessed a variety of unsettling incidents at Borley, including that of a nun, that of a young boy. There were also reports of lights going on and off in various of the many rooms, which is strange considering the house was never connected to a gas or electricity supply. Even the water was obtained from a well in the courtyard. There was also numerous sightings of a phantom coach driven by 2 headless horsemen. Reverend Henry Bull died in 1892 and his son, the Reverend Harry Bull, took over operations at Borley and the paranormal activities continued. On the 9th of June 1927, Reverend Harry Bull also died, and the rectory became vacant until October 1928, when the Reverend Guy Smith and his wife moved in. Soon after moving in, Reverend Smith's wife, Mabel, whilst cleaning out an old cupboard, came across a very tightly packaged brown paper package that upon opening terrifyingly contained the skull of a young woman, which she decided to bury in the rectory grounds. Strange lights would also appear in vacant rooms, and the sound of heavy footsteps echoed the empty building. There was also reports by locals, the servant at Borley, Anne Smith's wife, of a horse-drawn carriage on the grounds that had appeared at night. Pleading words could also be heard coming from the Blue Room inside the house, saying, "Don't, Carlos, don't." The Smiths decided to contact the Daily Mirror newspaper and ask to be put in touch with the Society for Psychic Research, and on the 10th of June 1929 the newspaper sent a reporter who promptly wrote the first in a series of articles detailing the paranormal and poltergeist activity at Borley. The Daily Mirror arranged for Harry Price, a paranormal researcher, to make his first visit to Borley, and he arrived on the 12th of June. Immediately, the phenomena of a new kind appeared, such as the throwing of stones and a vase, as well as many other objects. Spirit messages were tapped out from the gilded frame of a mirror. The Smiths decided to leave Borley Rectory and did so on the 14th of July 1929, and the parish had some difficulty in finding a replacement. The following year, however, the Reverend Lionel Foyster, who was a first cousin of the Bulls, and his wife Marianne moved into the rectory along with their adopted daughter Adelaide. On the 16th of October 1930, Lionel Foyster wrote an account listing the various strange incidents that occurred during the time the Foysters lived at the rectory, and which was subsequently sent to the psychic researcher Harry Price. These accounts included bell ringing, windows shattering, throwing of stones and bottles, wall writing, and the locking of their daughter Adelaide in a room when there was no lock on the door. Marianne reported to her husband a whole range of poltergeist activity that included her being thrown from her bed, and on one occasion Adelaide was attacked by something horrible. Reverend Foyster tried on 2 occasions to conduct an exorcism, but his efforts were thwarted both times. In the middle of both exorcisms, he was struck on the shoulder by a fist-sized stone at great velocity. The Foysters left Borley in October 1935 as a result of Reverend Lionel Foyster's ill health. Borley remained vacant for some time after the Reverend Foyster's departure, and in May 1937 Harry Price took out a year-long rental agreement with Queen Anne's Bounty, who were the owners of the property. Price placed advertisements in the Times newspaper on the 25th of May 1937 and conducted subsequent personal interviews, and thereafter recruited a group of 48 official observers, mostly students, who were to spend the night at Borley, mainly at weekends, with the specific instructions to report any phenomena that occurred to Price immediately. In March 1938, a woman called Helen Glanville conducted a planchette séance in Stratham, South London, and Price, after a thorough investigation, reported that the woman had made contact with 2 spirits, the first of which was that of a young nun who identified herself as Sister Marie Laïa. According to the planchette story, Marie was a French nun who left her religious order and travelled to England to marry a member of the Waldegrave family, who were the owners of Borley's 17th century manor house, Borley Hall. She was said to have been murdered in an older building on the site of the rectory, and her body then buried in a well as punishment for breaking her vows. The wall writings at Borley are alleged to be her pleas for help. One message read, "Marianne, please help me get out." The second spirit to be contacted identified himself as Sunex Amures, and the spirit claimed that he would set fire to the rectory at 9 o'clock that night, 27th of March in 1938. He also said that at the time, the bones of a murdered person would also be revealed. In 1937, Captain W.H. Gregson bought Borley Rectory, knowing full well of its haunted reputation. He enlisted Harry Price to investigate the house further. Gregson even wrote a few articles about the place on his own. Then one night in 1939, Borley Rectory was consumed by fire. By the time the flames had run their course, only the sturdy brick walls remained. The fire itself remains a mystery. Alan William Gregson claims that his father was shelving books in the library when an oil lamp accidentally tipped over. Another son, Anthony, had a different explanation for the fire. In a letter he wrote, "My father, Captain W.H. Gregson, bought Borley Rectory as a real estate venture around 1937, at which time it was classified by the prominent spiritualist Harry Price as the most haunted house in England. When this didn't pan out, he simply torched the building for insurance." Whatever actually happened to Borley Rectory on that night in 1939, we may never know. In August 1943, Harry Price conducted a brief dig in the cellars of the ruins of the rectory and discovered 2 bones thought to be that of a young woman. The bones were given a Christian burial in Liston churchyard after the parish of Borley refused to allow the ceremony to take place. Today, the land of what was the rectory has been divided up partly with a farm and partly with bungalows, which was built in the 1960s. I hope you enjoyed our latest edition in Scary Stories, and if you did enjoy it, I would ask that you like, subscribe and share. And until next time, be safe and sweet dreams.